Good morning, Revolution, and welcome to our show this morning. Somebody tricked me and went on six instead of one. We
Mhm.
have a wonderful set of issues lined up this morning. John Case is joining us along with Anita and Scott. Rosanna is away for the day. A lot is happening during all week long, and especially this morning. We just heard that the Supreme Court has voted to overturn Roe v. Wade. And I just got one question. Where is the demonstration? Where in the hell is the demonstration? Because the people are going to have to rise up and deal with this thing. And I think that one of the most important issues, of course, is going to be the vote, because the only way to overcome a legal precedent like the one that came down this morning is legislatively, is in Congress. Congress can deal with it, but in order for Congress to deal with it, we need a new Congress, which brings me to my next point, which is the Poor People's March. There was an event, a manifestation of people organizing and rising up last Saturday. I think I'm the only one here who was there. It was a wonderful, beautiful day. Couldn't have been a better day, Anita. And I
Mhm.
know Ohio had a strong contingent in the march. How many Buckeyes were present?
At least 30. I think perhaps a few more than that it didn't go down altogether. But yes, they had a great experience with it. They really appreciated meeting other comrades and also talking about communism in their buses on the way to and from the city, that DC. So I watched from an Ohio Poor People's Campaign watch party. So I got to watch the speeches. In fact, I probably heard the speeches even better than you did on the ground there, and with other members of the Poor People's Campaign in Ohio, and we got to apply it to our own state. And it was just a really excellent little group to watch with online. So there were some very inspiring speeches.
You probably did hear more speeches than me, because Rosanna and I, we had, a few hundred people, Scott, who came down.
Nice.
And they were coming up from Maine and Kentucky, and not Arizona, but Minnesota and Texas and California, and clubs I never heard of. And Rosanna and I were busy welcoming them and greeting, talking with them, and taking pictures, and just having a good old time. It was an important event, and we encourage everybody to go to peoplesworld.org and check out the article by Mark Gruenberg about the march. The most important thing for me was the unity of action, John Case, with all the people present. It was a splendid, joyful occasion, optimistic, and struggle oriented. And one of the next things they're going to do, John Case, is organize a lobby in September. The masses are going to descend on Washington again in September to lobby the Congress to pass Build Back Better and other important legislation. I don't know how far they'll get, but the fact that they're going is important, don't you think, John?
Yeah, I mean, I think the getting people in the street over what's going on is the only way it's going to happen. I was so sorry I lost my ride, and I can't. My family says I'm not supposed to drive because my eyesight. But anyway, there was a lot of big turnout from Shepherdstown, West Virginia. Which organized for it and had a bus. And I think that, but I have to say that in West Virginia, it's a very uphill um, climb uh, to realize the program. So anyway,
It's going to be an uphill climb in general. I mean, this court, man, is just uh, I don't know what to say about it. Scott, the Supreme Court's decision this morning will be a big setback for all women. Will have a particular resonance among working class women, particularly in those states that have those, what do you call those, trigger laws? Those trigger laws.
Mhm.
And,
Yeah.
it's going to require a whole lot of support and solidarity between now and hopefully if we are able to elect a new Congress in November, it's going to be a long haul.
And
Um,
there's also a political and electoral strategy component to this. I think overturning Roe v. Wade was like a campaign promise or platform plank of the Republican Party since, I mean, practically since Roe was decided, and the fact that uh, Republicans finally delivered on that horrific anti-worker, anti-people, anti-women, anti-democratic promise is really going to energize, I think, a lot of Republican voters and get them to the polls, which is what um, is part of what was intended, I believe. Um, and we haven't seen anything of comparable scope or ambition, uh, to my knowledge, coming out of the Democratic side of things. Uh, there's been a lot of, you know, rhetoric and then backtracking and oh, it's not the time, or oh, we're going to talk about it. So I worry that there's going to be a real kind of a motivation um, gap, and we're going to have to overcome that because another it was bad enough with Congress as it stands. If the situation gets worse, it's going to get real hellish.
don't
Well,
you
there's a
think, Anita,
recession coming.
that the fact that they passed this, that this decision was rendered, is going to motivate women in general? Republicans will be encouraged, and I hear Scott's point.
Mhm.
They'll feel like, hey, we got a victory, and that will. But on the other hand, people are going to be pissed off. No.
Yeah, I think people are really pissed off. And you asked, where's the demonstration? Where are people coming out? Well, it's at 3273 East Main Street in Columbus at 5 o'clock this afternoon. We're picketing in front of one of those fake abortion clinics. And we've had this plan in place ready to go and to activate as soon as this decision came down. I think it is really I mean, this not only affects all women, but all people. I mean, this is damaging to everybody. To have your families unplanned and just a random, people forced to have babies that are unwanted, or to start a family that they don't want. It's just, and to have, put women's lives will be in danger because of this. So, and I'm sure there will be a death toll. It's just overall just a horrible. I feel today like I did the day after Election Day on 2016. There's a real. It's just such a blow to us. But I think people will be very angry and will get out to vote. I I I disagree with that with Scott that it was an issue with the Republicans since Roe v. Wade, because when Roe was ruled on in 72. The Republicans were the ones who appointed the justices that did over that ruled on the original case, and they ruled from the point of view of privacy. And it took quite a number of years for the anti-abortion movement to move into this realm of being, having so many single issue voters among the Republican Party. So I think people will be motivated to vote against the Republicans because of this. Even people who seem to be pro-life or are attached to those groups, they all have a cousin who needed this help and needed a safe abortion at one time or another, or a friend. Everyone, so many women have availed themselves of this right that we've had for 50 years. I think this will really motivate people.
I have my doubts.
You have your doubts about?
Well, I think that the driving force there are going to be two of them. One is inflation, and the other is the fear of recession. That is going to overwhelm most of the, if history is any guide, most of the issues. And I think the trends are not good there. And you see people reacting in what in very bizarre ways. But for example, I've watched the West Virginia labor movement just in the space of a week take a significant step backwards in terms of their loyalty to the Democratic Party, for example. And I think the invasion of Ukraine has diverted Biden's main strength, which was the Build Back Better program, and that there's no chance that the prices are coming down as long as that war is going on. No chance. And so you got a situation where he can't return to his agenda that elected him, and that's going to compromise what happens in November big time. So I would not count on the very powerful social issues. Obviously, there are a tremendous amount of resistance that's going to be mounted on both the gun control and the thing. Although the gun control law in Congress made more progress than I thought it had made when I read the details today, but still, the headwinds economically are going to be so big, and already are so big, that I think you got to think through whether these decisions and social issues of many kinds are going to be shaded, I think, by that.
Well, it's going to be a big fight, obviously, and then you had the gun control decision by the court yesterday as well, and that's an issue. And the reason that it got passed, John Case, in Congress was because 75-80% of the American people support some form of gun control. And so even Mitch McConnell and 15 other Republicans had to, make a concession to and vote for that legislation. So, I agree that pocketbook issues, we said back in the winter that this election might turn on the price of gas. That's true, but it might not. And it just stresses the need for organization, and more organization, because he or she or they who were able to turn out to vote is going to win. That's who's going to win, and so we will have to see. I hope we have been paying attention to what happened in the congressional hearings on January the 6th. And I mean, from all the way from Trump calling the legislators and public officials in Georgia, to his pressure on the Department of Justice, Scott, he was hell bent on overturning that election. Now that don't surprise you, I don't
No.
think, but you live in a conservative community. Do you think
I
that?
live in fact, well, I live in New York State, still in a very conservative community, but just across the border in Pennsylvania, the town where I grew up is in a county that is controlled not just by Trump supporting Republicans, but by people who are actively involved in the organization of that fascist threat. Steve Bannon has paid a couple of visits here. One of the county commissioners in Bradford County has appeared on his podcast. There's a lot of, there are sort of what you might call astroturf school board write-in campaigns. So yeah, we're very clear, and it's clear that it's not about one particular election. It's about whether somebody who disagrees with that extreme right position is allowed to hold power. And in addition, whether women or people of color or immigrants are allowed to have any sort of political power, and it's a terrifying thing. In fact, one of the
Does
other
that mean that no, the hearings will not affect the average Joe or Elizabeth in your neck of the woods, or yes?
I think in every neck of the woods, it depends on how we talk. Like the hearings themselves, televised, are not doing nobody's going to change their position from seeing them on television. I don't think. Um, People who are watching whatever coverage, incidentally happens of them on Fox are not going to change their opinion. Whoever watches them on CNBC or whatever CNN is not going to change theirs. It's how we have to be talking to people about in our workplaces and our families about what really happened and about what the real stakes are,
But
and
Anita,
that's
I saw some news program that had some focus groups, and they said that the focus group they were listening, and that some of them shifted a little bit. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know that there's this like uh, blindness that what do you call those things that horses wear when they
blinders.
Blinders, right?
blinded?
Blinders.
I know people have like, and they can't
Something
hear
like that.
and they can't see, they can't imbibe some people, no matter what you say. But there are some who are listening, no?
Well,
I'm
They,
sure there. Oh, sorry. Go
I
ahead,
was like,
Scott.
just
I
that what makes people receptive to information that challenges um, their ideological formation or whatever is a relationship with them. And I think that's yes. Perhaps there's some shift in focus groups. Whether that's going to translate you know, into an ideological change, into a change of political position, is questionable. I would say.
but maybe John Case, the hearings aren't aimed at the hardcore MAGA crowd. Maybe it's the independents and the
yeah,
so-called centrists that they're trying to influence. What do you think?
I think they're making. I think it'll make a difference. But I don't know whether it's going to be decisive. Um, and I think it's important for them to try to make Trump out to be a criminal. However, there's a risk in that, and it's not something we usually think about in this country that because we've done it before. But when you criminalize your president, you after that you're going to have a problem with your own legitimacy. You're going to have to reestablish it. And it's interesting that the Chinese uh, chairman there, Xi, had a lengthy set of comments on this relative to the Stalin controversy. And I've always thought they were quite thoughtful. You should think this through about whether political instability increases or decreases, and what the foundation of that really is. We did this before in the Civil War, but Lincoln, as you recall, at the end of the thing, declined um, criminalization in a sense, although he removed General Lee's citizenship. Um, but it's an interesting and complicated issue, I think, about how it plays politically. And I would not overestimate the way in which the public, a working class public, understands the question of democracy, and what is democracy and what is a freedom and what is not a freedom. I think that's also a pretty complicated question. My years with the labor movement taught me that the UE was the most democratic union I knew about, but democracy did not decide the NLRB elections primarily, not democracy in the formal sense. So I don't know. I have
But
mixed feelings.
Anita, hasn't the actions of, or lack thereof, of Congress, the Supreme Court, the executive office of this country uh, uh, created a situation in which their status has dropped so low that you know, people are already looking at it with not much confidence. And then to John's point about criminalizing Trump, his actions speak for themselves, no?
I think we shouldn't concentrate on criminalizing Trump so much as recognizing that we really had an attempt at a fascist takeover of this country, and it was stopped. And we need to, but it's the threat is ongoing, and we need to put into place safeguards that keep that from happening in the future. And as far as how people look at it, I do think, I mean, maybe I'm just wearing my rose-colored glasses today, but I really think those hearings are going to make a difference. And sure, not all of us are watching with every minute of the hearings, but a lot of people are exposed to the highlights of each of the hearings. And I think the way they have structured it really enables us to think about, or enables Americans or people in this country to think about what happened in new kind of frameworks. And one of those frameworks is, it's not the January 6th hearing. We're not just talking about January 6th, but we're really talking about fraud and felonies that were committed in the weeks before January 6th. And because that plot to take over the government illegitimately did not work, was not successful by January 6th, which was the last ditch attempt, then the violence erupted. But I think there were a lot of steps taken on the way there, and I hope those people will be held accountable, and structures will be put into place to prevent it in the future.
But isn't, Scott, the fascist danger as it evolved in this country associated with criminality? And don't you have to point that out? And shouldn't there be penalties? Because if they're not penalties for committing crimes, doesn't the president who commits those crimes stand above the law? And doesn't that ultimately increase the fascist threat?
Well, yeah, I mean, of course there should be criminal charges, but that's not, as at least as I understand these hearings, there is not going to be. They cannot bring criminal charges against any of these people. I think they're making a case for for the entities that have standing to do so to bring those charges, and I hope they are brought. There is deep criminality, but there's also a deep problem of things that are of legal crimes, of crimes, things that are not technically illegal, but are deep violations of democracy. And so we draw this line right between a democratic process on the one hand, which works within the law, within the system, and fascism on the other, which suspends it. And but that line is getting real blurry, right? The Texas Republican Party just voted for a new platform that's very extreme on a whole number of issues, among them calling for repealing or abrogating the Voting Rights Act in its entirety. So this is, I mean, this is an attempt to go back to, I think, what we had before Reconstruction, which was, or in the South anyway, which was akin to fascism, in that it was a violent, dictatorial exercise of power by the ruling class, but totally within the law, totally within an accepted democratic process. So
So I think you guys are dancing around the question, all three of you. John Case, if Trump is not held accountable, yeah, okay, the hearings are not designed to prosecute. That has to be done by the Department of Justice. And Eric Holder yesterday said there's a goddamn smoking gun when Trump told them all you got to do is say there's corruption and leave the rest to us, me, and those fascists in the Congress, all of whom tried to get immunity. They tried to get clemency.
Right.
So if you don't hold them accountable, aren't you facilitating next time around the fascist danger? I mean, if
Well,
they're
I
above
think if
the
you're going to
law,
well, you better be able to arrest them and put them behind bars or put a bullet in their head or whatever, because
he's joking
they're
about
not
the
going to obey.
bullet.
They're not going to obey that order. I mean, they got a 40% base.
He
So
means
I would,
that
you better be able to
politically.
enforce it. That's my question. You have to enforce it, otherwise it's bullshit.
Well, he means that he's a poet in his in another way. So I mean, to me,
These guys are
that's
armed.
yeah, they're armed, and they were also with those arms talking about declaring martial law. They were also with those arms talking about seizing voting machines. You know, that's what they were talking about doing, and this is no joke, and so the a big question. I mean, what Xi was talking about with respect to, I mean, even under socialism, if crimes are committed, leadership has to be held accountable. I mean, isn't that one of the big lessons of 20th century socialism? Because if you don't, then your legitimacy just evaporates.
Well,
And
we
and,
didn't
and
help. We
Anita, I mean, and you know, and once your legitimacy goes, it's hard as hell to get it back.
Yeah,
Anita?
it is a crisis right now of legitimacy on all fronts. I just think it's just been we're yeah, and the Supreme Court decision on top of that, it's yeah, I'm speechless, Joe. Sorry.
But in Colombia,
Yeah.
last
Yes.
week, there was an election of
Yes.
Gustavo Petro and Francia Marquez, a former leftist fighter and an Afro-Colombian woman, attorney. That's a big thing. That country has gone through decades of what they call la violencia, armed battles between the reaction and democracy. They
And
call it
it's also the main
imperialism.
base of US imperialism in
Main base of
South
the drug
America.
cartels, the U.S. and you're right, and now a big and that pink tide that was sweeping
Mhm.
Latin America that backed up a little bit, over the last several years. Now it's coming back even stronger.
That's right.
So we have to, you know, if there is no struggle, there is no progress. And electoral struggle, even in a situation where there was civil war, as there has been in Colombia for many a decade, it just shows you that you got to use all of the tools in the toolbox. And so we can
Amen.
offer our congratulations to the working class people of Colombia, the indigenous people of African descent. There's a big African uh, descendant population in Colombia. I was there when I was
Hmm.
a student for several months back in the day, and it's one of the places that I still visit in my dreams. I would love to go back sometime. Um, it's time for our questions from our listening audience. And this question is about love. This question is about romance. This is a matter of the heart. And the dude who's potentially a comrade wrote to us and he said, Anita and Scott, John, I'm in love. And I'm a leftist. I'm a revolutionary. I'm a Marxist. And I want to work with the Communist Party, but my significant other is a Republican, Cold War kind of person, and so is her family.
Hmm.
What should I do to open my heart to her and convince her that I'm not the devil, so that our relationship can blossom. What
Uh,
can I do?
well, that's easy. You got to
John?
just take the India-Chinese agreement on peaceful coexistence, and you organize a family study group on how they get along.
Why didn't I think of that? Anita, what do you
I,
do?
I would say break that engagement right away. I really think I always look at our namesake Anna Haas Morgan. She was married to a man who gave her the ultimatum: it's either me or the party, and she said bye.
Bye.
So no time. Life's too short for trying to convince the already convinced. So.
We have some love pessimism going on here, or maybe realism, Scott. What do you think?
Well, I'm pretty sure that I know of at least one comrade in the party who is married to a Republican, and who makes it work. But what I would say, this is advice that my wife gave to a similar question that someone wrote into the mailbag from a younger person about not about coming out to a fiance uh, as a communist, but to their family. And she said, think about it, like somebody who comes out as gay or as trans. Um, it's don't go and say, hey, mom, dad, I met this really great guy, and oh, by the way, I'm gay, right? You start with, this is who I am. This is who this. These are my values, my priorities. This is what my brain and my body are telling me, whatever the case may be. And then, you know, so in terms of the party, that means it shouldn't start with I'm a communist, I'm a Marxist. It should start with I'm going to register voters. I'm going to stand on picket lines because this is who I am. I'm going to work with the poor people's movement. And then being a member of the party, being a comrade, comes from those things. It's a step forward in your political development that's already happening, not something that kind of comes out of the blue. That's what I would say.
I say, if you were about to put a ring on it, take that ring back to the jeweler and get your money back.
Yes.
I mean, don't even, I mean, you have to have some common ground. And with those ideas come racism, come anti immigrant, come homophobia, come all kinds of, and if they're not open to listening, I guess you have to judge it on the individual because sometimes people are just confused. But after you do what Scott described, you describe your moral precepts and your strivings, and you don't get nowhere after a while. You know, get your money back. Put an ad in one of those online dating. Try again because love should come into everybody's life. And we wish you all the best and good luck. And we'd love to see you in the party. That does it for the week. Good morning, Revolution, everybody. We'll see you next
Good
week.
morning.
Until then, go to the protest today and
All right.
tomorrow against the rejection of Roe v. Wade and for a woman's right to choose. And continue the march, which we began last Saturday at the Poor People's March. Continue it every day between now and the election. So stay strong, stay safe, stay in the fight. We'll see you next week. Bye now.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Thanks.
Bye. Thanks, comrades.